Why I can't defend One Piece anymore. All right, so I turned the speed up to 1.5 because this video is already almost 50 minutes long, and I talk a lot during my videos. I'm more of a commentator than I am a reactor, but whatever, let's watch this video.
Alright everyone, listen up, because I have something important to tell you. Let me start off by saying this. If you like One Piece, good for you. I don't care. I used to like One Piece too. This is not a video where I'm going to tell you guys that you're wrong for enjoying One Piece. This is not a video where I'm going to try to tell you to stop reading or watching the series. This is a video about why I personally decided to step away from the series. And before...
Even though he made an entire video about it, making it kind of like, oh, everyone else should drop One Piece. I'm just joking. Let's jump in.
He tries to pull the, oh, you were never a real fan bullshit. No, I was a real fan. You're talking to the same guy who made the Jolly Roger ranking video, okay? I'm the same guy whose YouTube channel started off as a One Piece centered channel. My old YouTube profile picture was literally a wanted poster from the One Piece series, okay? My first video ever to preference this was on Gecko Moria. Who the fuck cares about Gecko Moria? Well, apparently I did. I loved One Piece at one point, and I genuinely loved digging into its expansive world. Your boy even ended up going to Japan. I entered the Shonen Jump shop, and I went out of my way to purposely get myself measured next to the One Piece characters. Turns out I'm slightly taller than Zoro. I say all of this to preference that these are the words of somebody who genuinely loved One Piece at one point. This isn't ignorance, it's not bandwagon hate, so don't tell me that I never cared about the series. Don't tell me that I'm not a fan. You guys can go tweak out and cry about it in the comment section. And hey, if you guys are gonna leave death threats, try to at least make them creative, alright? Also, before anybody says, you didn't understand the story, Shane, I understood it just fine. You people are the reason why this intro was about 5 minutes long. Saying I didn't understand One Piece is an easy way to avoid engaging with criticism. I understood the story, I just stopped being impressed by it. And to be very...
I'm actually really curious, like, what his actual reasons are, mainly because right now, like, if you're keeping up with One Piece right now, it's kind of at its best point. Like, pretty much everything that we've been waiting for years is kind of happening right now. Sorry if I'm a little nasally. I am kind of stuffed up right now, but I hope you guys like that sound. Anyway, so I'm very curious because pretty much any One Piece fan would tell you like right now is kind of like the best time to get into One Piece because all of the stuff that we've been waiting for is like happening right now. It's pretty much in its best phase right now. So after loving all of this content, I'm wondering what steered him away from doing that. I'm gonna go on a limb and say one of his points is probably that One Piece doesn't kill off it characters because that's kind of a huge issue that a lot of people have. It's kind of people's biggest issue, honestly. Like other than that, that's probably the main one that I can think of.
There was a lot that I did enjoy about One Piece. I liked the world, I liked the expansive universe, I liked the sense of adventure, and I was never even turned off by the weird character designs. I actually liked how One Piece looked. The over-exaggerated proportions, the goofy faces, even the fucking cartoon logic. And yes, I am fully aware the characters like Nami and Robin have toothpick waists and breasts the size of basketballs. That's not what broke me, okay? If that was my sole problem, I would have tapped out thousands of chapters ago. And so then the obvious question becomes, Shane, what really changed for you? That's right, I hear all of you in my comment section screaming, but Shane, what did One Piece do to you? And my answer in return, nothing. Yeah, you guys can call me Horty Jones because my answer is nothing. Nothing changed, and that's the problem for me. The story never evolved in a meaningful way for me. Heartbreaking, I know. And this is where we begin section 1, the stagnation of One Piece, in my opinion. In my opinion, the structure hasn't changed, and the outcomes certainly haven't changed. Whether you...
Yeah, but like, is that really an issue though? That's just the writer's style, which pretty much no writer, typically I should say, changes their style of writing. Usually a series is just, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll let him continue.
To read the story, you will soon come to realize that it is the same sequence of events unfolding over and over and over again. And after long enough, that repetition doesn't feel comforting. It feels stagnant like pond scum. And here's the loop. The Straw Hats arrive at a new island. The Straw Hats come face to face with quirky culture. Get it? Because the dog is extra long, and the island name is Long Ring, Longland Island, or whatever the fuck it is. But this aside, more often than not, the Straw Hats will encounter funny locals and have strange rules on these islands. But uh-oh, something's wrong. There's an oppressive ruler, a tyrant, a real pirate, a god, perhaps a sea creature that needs to be dealt with. But then we meet a new character. Go ahead and cue the tragic flashback and the same sad music used for every sequence, but it should be stated that One Piece delivers us a plethora of themes. Dead parents, slavery, hunger, trauma. And let me be very clear here, I'm not trying to make a caricature out of any of these themes. These are serious subjects, and for the most part, I believe that One Piece actually handles these maturely and effectively. That's not the problem. That's never been my problem. My problem is the resolution is always the same. No matter how complex or horrific the situation is, it ultimately relies on Luffy between bites of meat and stretching his arms, punching the problem in the face. Different trauma, different setting.
I mean, it's kind. First of all, he's the main character, and it's also a Shonen Battle series. I feel like every series is kind of like that. I mean, it would be nice to get, like, for example, like Zoro, at least, if he could take down, like, the big villain of an arc, that would be cool. So I do kind of get that point, because I know Dragon Ball Z is kind of like that too. Like, a lot of times it focuses too much on Goku. Of course, Gohan took down Cell, but for the most part, it's kind of the Goku show. And then even in Dragon Ball Super, I haven't seen Dragon Ball Super, but from what I've heard, it's kind of just like the Goku and Vegeta show. Like nobody else really gets a time to shine much, and if so, it's for like 10 minutes. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really see that being that much of an issue because One Piece is just one of those stories that there's so much more to it, like so much more is going on. It's the same thing with One Punch Man, right? Like if you ever see One Punch Man, I know so many people are like, oh, One Punch Man gets boring because it's the same joke over and over and over. It's just, oh, giant villain shows up, no matter how strong, Saitama can beat him in one punch. And it's like, okay, yeah, but you're ignoring the other 80% of shit that goes on in the series, which is actually really interesting. Like there's so many side characters, so much world building in One Punch Man, and I think it's the same way in One Piece where yeah, okay, Goku or sorry, Luffy, no matter how bad things get, Luffy shows up at the very end to take down the big villain. Like it's like okay, cool, but like what about the other 80% of shit that happens on each island is actually quite different in every single island and is continuously expanding the world. We're continuously getting introduced to brand new characters with compelling backstories. Like there's so much other stuff. Like I don't know. I'm just like honestly like I really don't care that Luffy comes in and beats down the big bad villain because I just kind of I guess I just expect that at this point. But I'm not like I'm not gonna drop the series because of it. You know what I mean? You're talking about like what? We have to sit there for 30, 40 chapters of material and then there's like 5 chapters of Luffy beating someone's ass. Like there's still that other 30, 40 other chapters that happened before then.
And I shit you not, this happens every single time. The island is saved, everyone cries, everyone parties, the Straw Hats leave, and then they do it again, and again, and again. And eventually, I wasn't even asking what would happen, I was only wondering when the sad backstory would.
Well, I mean that's kind of being a pirate though. Like drinking and partying with your buddies, singing folk songs, like that's a part of being like a pirate. Like if I made a manga about magic and people went to magic school and the next thing you know the whole series is about learning new spells. It's like well it's about wizards. like like that's what it's about. That's what wizards do. Like have you ever seen any magic series, right? Same thing with pirates. Like a very big thing about pirates is that they drink beer, they party all the time, they sing folk songs. Like that's literally what it is. So if it's a pirate series and 99% of the characters are pirates, you're going to have like a lot of parties, a lot of celebrations after each arc. Like that's literally ingrained in that culture. You know what I mean? So I don't think that's to be upset about like oh it's predictable. It's like no, but that's like the culture though. Like Oda is staying very true to pirate culture.
I transformed into fortune teller Baba. And so when I would go to watch the anime adaptation of One Piece, there was no suspense for me. I mean, this shit was literally muscle memory for your boy. And this repetition becomes impossible to ignore when you notice how specific this trope becomes. Before anybody jumps to the comments, well, let's be real, I'm sure you guys are already in the comment section, but I want to be very clear about what I'm doing here. I'm not trying to say that every single chapter of One Piece is the same. I'm not talking about the travel arcs, the gag arcs, or even just the short transitions. I'm talking about the major narrative arcs that contain villains, stakes, and are supposed to have emotional payoffs with consequences. And so after my years of watching One Piece, I created this list. Because when you strip away the names, powers, locations, and hype, One Piece relies on a very consistent narrative structure. This is the
It's like yeah, but every story does. Like it's very rare to find a story that doesn't. In fact, when you learn how to story write in general, they teach you like I forget what it is off the top of my head, but it's something like you have like the build up, the rising action, the climax. Like there's literally certain steps that is meant for when you're writing a story that every story follows. Yeah, there's every once in a while you might have a story that's just kind of like off the wall, like I don't know, like Fooly Cooly or something. But it's like, but generally speaking, there is a formula to every story, and that's just good story writing. You know what I mean? And I don't know, maybe it does start to get repetitive, but I don't know.
that the vast majority of One Piece arcs follow, sometimes perfectly, perhaps maybe missing a variable or two at most. The Straw Hats arrive at a new island. Someone important needs their protection. A dramatic backstory reframes the injustice. A corrupt authority is revealed. A larger power structure escalates the said conflict. There's a countdown to the disaster. Luffy clashes with a powerful authority figure. The crew leaves, and then the world reacts after the fact. Now, this isn't just my opinion. This is a clear pattern that occurs time after time, and we should talk about where it applies. Looking back to the
Yeah, I do agree with that. That is a formula that he follows a lot for most of the arcs. I will say though, how it happens, like Luffy fought a big authority, power of authority, and then the world reacts to it. That's one of the things when coming into like the fact that One Piece doesn't kill off characters. It has like Oda has to build stakes in other ways. So if he's not killing off characters, he has to create a level of threat for the main characters, and that would be the world government. So they build up like his bounty, and then the world reacts, and everyone knows Luffy's name, and then now the government's after him. So it's kind of just building stakes over time. I wouldn't necessarily say that that makes it predictable writing when it's like, yeah, it is predictable, but it's like just because it's predictable doesn't make it bad. It's like, no, but you know that they have to build stakes for the main character, right? And they're not going to kill anyone off.
Of what I would consider to be the prototype here, we can already see that the foundation is in place with arcs like Shellstown, Orangetown, Syrup Village, the Baratier, Arlong Park. You have many of these same variables with the oppressed locals, the flashback drama, Tyrant Authority, Luffy intervenes, and then the crew moves on. So you can
But I don't disagree with them though. That is a point that I'll make. If he gets bored of that, that's cool. But like, again, I don't disagree with him, but I'm personally not bored of it.
see that Oda has developed his foundation here, and then he tries to build upon this in the Alabasta saga, with Whiskey Peak, Drum Island, and of course Alabasta. And this is where the modern One Piece arc becomes unmistakable in my opinion. Vivi needs protection, Crocodile controls the system, there's a literal countdown bomb, the government fallout, the bounties increase, and from this point on, the structure becomes the default. With the Skypiea arc, it's the same structure with just a different coat of paint. We get both Jaya and Skypiea here, and it's a different setting with the same mechanics. We meet Konis, who of course needs the Straw Hat's help, we get Eneru acting as a false god, and then we get the historical flashback that is just reframing the injustices that are occurring, the ticking level island disaster occurring towards the end of the arc, as always.
Yeah, but I understand what he's trying to say. Like, it's a repetitive, like, structure. But what actually happens in the arc is, like, huge. For, like, like, Skypiea, for example, he's talking about right now. It's like, yeah, but, like, did you pay attention to the actual material itself? It's like, yeah, technically, oh, we meet a character. They need protection. Oh, there's a sad backstory. Oh, now Luffy fights the final boss. Like, yeah, but in between those chapters, they're building to something massive in the background, which is why people say that the world building in One Piece is so crazy.
And the crew leaves. So cosmetically, yeah, it's different because it's a sky island, but honestly, it's just structurally identical. Then we move on to Water 7 and Enies Lobby. This arc doesn't break the formula. If anything, I would say it perfects it. This is one of the best arcs in all of One Piece, in my opinion. In these arcs, Robin is the person who's in need of protection, the world government is the chief antagonist, there's a countdown, the initiation of the Buster Call, we get a massive aftermath where everybody's bounty jumps significantly. And then we move on to Thriller Bark, which is just another condensed variant of the formula. We have a contained setting, tragic backstories, Gecko Moria acting as the authority figure, Luffy has to beat Moria before the sunrise countdown, Kuma representing the outside escalation, shorter arc overall, same structure. Admittedly, the Summit War does shake things up a little bit, but mostly abides by the formula. Luffy ends up going to a new location. The important person that needs saving here is Ace, of course. The entire saga is a rescue mission. The whole ticking clock concept is really the execution. And of course, we definitely get dramatic flashbacks here. Ace's childhood, Luffy's bond with him, Whitebeard's idea of family, and of course, the overall authority figure here is the world government publicly executing a political prisoner to maintain order. And you could say that the larger power structure escalating the conflict here could be any of the above. The admirals, the warlords, the pacifistas. I mean, there's so many of them. And of course, Luffy clashes with these figures again and again, even when he's clearly outmatched. And then we move into the new world where this formula...
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I understand the point he's trying to make, but when you actually sit down and watch the series, it makes sense, right? Because, like, up until this point, Luffy's obviously not strong enough to take down any of the world leaders, but he can't progress. Dude, homie can't show up at Marineford and, like, not fight a leader. You know what I mean? Like, they're there. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I do get his point, though, but I don't know. To me, I just feel like it's saying that he's simplifying it is like an understatement.
Asserted at a much larger scale. The Straw Hats arrive at Fishman Island, where of course Shirahoshi needs protection. We get the status quo traumatic flashback involving deep historical trauma between Fisher Tiger and Otohime, the involvement of Hody Jones and the new Fishman pirates, just representing a corrupt inherited authority born out of hatred. And we get the form of the larger power structure looming through the world government and the racial hierarchy. We get the classic countdown with the Noah falling on the island. Naturally, Luffy beats Hody Jones, the crew leaves, the world reacts, and then Luffy's status escalates. Then we enter Punk Hazard. Once again, we get a new island. The children need to be saved. Flashbacks through Caesar's experiments. The world government and Doflamingo's henchmen escalate the conflict. The poison gas creates a literal ticking disaster. Luffy clashes with Caesar, the crew leaves, and then we go to Dressrosa. And I'm sure you guys are getting the overall theme at this point, so I'm going to try to rapid fire through the next couple of these arcs. Dressrosa, protected figures, tragic flashbacks, false king, external power shielding him, the birdcage countdown, Luffy fights Dofi, massive world reaction. Move on to Zoe, oppressed people, historical trauma, imposed authority, the Yonko escalation with Kaido's crew, the annihilation threat of Zunisha, and then the crew moves on. Whole Cake Island, Sanji needs rescuing, we get an abusive backstory, we get more demonstrations of Yonko power from Big Mom and her crew, the countdown to the wedding, Luffy's clash with Big Mom, the escape, the global fallouts. Wano, we have the oppressed nation, generational trauma, corrupt rulers like Orochi, Yonko escalation, the falling island countdown of Onigashima, Luffy fights Kaido, and then the world order shifts. Everybody...
I will say this, though. Again, I mean, this video, I'm sure, have plenty of One Piece spoilers, so you have been warned. But I think overall, I think, I mean, obviously, we need to know more about the story, right? Like, we still need to know more about Joy Boy and the Void Sentry and that type of stuff. But with that being said, from what I see from this series, is like like Luffy being Joy Boy, or essentially having the fruit of Joy Boy, whatever, the Nika Nika fruit, in a way, like the whole world of One Piece is corrupted, right? And it's vast, right? Like the world itself is huge in One Piece, right? Like Joy Boy is kind of that light in the darkness. He's the one that destroys the corruption, right? It's kind of like in Naruto, right? How Naruto has the whole talk no jutsu, how every time he talks to a villain, they change their heart, then they become usually a good guy, or they die before they become a good guy. And it's like one of those things where you could say, oh, it's formulaic, but it's like, yeah, but it totally makes sense if that is the plot that Oda has for his main character. If we learn about the Void Century, we know the secret behind Joy Boy and the Will of D and all of these things, and it does showcase that Luffy is kind of the cure to corruption, essentially, then I feel like every arc, like going through this structure of like, oh, this place is corrupt. Luffy comes in and fucking changes it. It's like, yeah, but like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that actually makes sense because that's the character that he is, and that I feel like if that is true, then that's just even better on Oda's part of foreshadowing that way back when Luffy was just some random pirate with rubber powers, and then now you find out that he's like has the power of like some ancient god and shit, and he's like the sun god Nika, and he's like literally taking down corruption essentially. It's like now going through and you see all the islands that were corrupt until Luffy showed up, going through each, of these structures that he's talking about. I don't know. To me personally, it actually makes more sense.
The Straw Hats leave. Egghead, Vegapunk, and Bonnie need protection. Dramatic backstory of Kuma. Corrupt global authority. Admirals and the Elders escalate the conflict. The escape timer from Egghead Island. Luffy clashes with Kizaru. Worldwide consequences. Now let's stop. Let that breathe for a second. Different arcs.
I mean, he's saying worldwide consequences, but it's like, yeah, but are you understanding? I mean, I'm not saying that this guy doesn't understand. He does. He even explained it in the beginning of the video. But I'm just putting this out there. But also, are you understanding what those worldwide consequences are? That is the world building to One Piece. So it's like there's a reason why every island, or major island at least, usually does end in those huge worldwide consequences.
Aesthetics, different characters, but the same structure. You don't have to agree with me.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like he's not wrong in this video, right? He's right on the money. But to say that's a negative thing, that's where I'm kind of like, okay, what are we talking about here? It's like, yes, I understand it's the same structure, but the material itself is vastly different every time. It's just following a simplistic structure, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like if your friend is really good at baking chocolate cake and he bakes you a chocolate cake every Saturday, but it's the same chocolate cake. It's like, yeah, but it's a good ass chocolate cake though.
In fact, I don't even think all of these arcs are bad. Some of them are great, but once you see the structure, you can't unsee it. I'm not saying One Piece is bad. I'm saying it's predictable by design. Every arc starts to feel familiar, no matter how good it is. Different islands, different villains, different stakes, same pattern. And this carries us into Section 3, another problem that I have with One Piece. It's never just about helping people with One Piece. It's always something grander, like saving a kingdom. It can never just be a random person. Take Vivi, for example. She's not just a girl in trouble. She's the princess, and her kingdom is under threat. And the Straw Hats have to save Alabasta by defeating Crocodile. Cool, it works. Luffy punches the problem in the face, and then we move on. But then you do it again. The Straw Hats just so happen to meet Shirahoshi. And of course, what do you know? She's not just some random mermaid. She's the mermaid princess, the most important person on all of Fishman Island. And surprise, Fishman Island is in crisis. There's an extremist villain, racial tensions, generational hatred, centuries of oppression. And who shows up to fix all of that? The Straw Hats. And of course, Luffy punches out the problem, and then we move on. And in case anyone else thinks I'm cherry picking, oh look, there's another princess in another castle. I'm sure you guys are catching on at this point, but the Straw Hats meet Rebecca, another royal, another oppressed kingdom, another tyrant, Doflamingo. Say it with me, everybody. Luffy punches out the problem, and then we move on. Also, here's some more food for thought for you guys. Why is it that nobody in the One Piece universe can just be a person? You're probably asking, Shane, what do you mean by this? Well, what I mean is that everybody has to be somebody. Oda needs to give everybody some inflated sense of importance. For example, Luffy didn't just grow up with some random kid, it just had to be Gold Roger's son, the fucking Pirate King. Because of course it was.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. I'm gonna talk about the princesses here in a second, but Ace being Gold Roger's son, one of the coolest twists in the story. Not him being his son, but Luffy not being his son, right? Like, because like you kind of have suspicions at the beginning, like, oh, is Luffy Gold? Is Gold Roger his dad or his grandpa or something? And then later on, you do learn that Gold Roger is Ace's dad, right? And Luffy and Ace are brothers. And so you're like, oh shit, that's confirmation. Luffy's dad is I can't think of it. Oh my god, I can't think of it. Luffy's dad is I'm fucking blanking right now. But basically, I think that it's really cool to find out that Luffy's dad is Dragon, and then you find out that Ace's dad is Gold Roger, and then you're like, oh shit, so they're not actually brothers, blah blah blah, and then later on you get their backstory. I don't know. I just think that twist was set up well. That they don't have, like, once it's revealed that they don't have the same dad. Whatever. Let's continue the video. I think that's a cool plot point, but yeah.
Isn't even the worst part. Luffy also grew up with Sabo, who I'm not exaggerating, is also born into nobility. He survives an incident that should have absolutely killed him, conveniently loses his memory, and then grows up to become the second in command of the Revolutionary Army. And we're all just supposed to accept this without thinking. But I'll come back to Sabo later because I have a whole section on him. But
Well, yeah, that goes back to what I'm about to say about the princesses, but I'll let him finish this point.
Sanji just couldn't be a regular cook. His backstory with Zeph, oh, clearly that wasn't good enough. It turns out that Sanji is a genetically enhanced royal prince from a bloodline of the evil Germa family. Yeah, this is really enhancing Sanji's character so much more. I'm so glad we did this. Also, look at Shanks. Shanks couldn't just be a strong pirate. Now his father has to be one of the 5 elders, therefore making Shanks royalty. Oh, but we can't forget that Shanks also has an estranged twin brother who just so happens to be a world noble. Why? Why couldn't Shanks just have a normal family? Do we even need to know Shanks' family? Seriously? Did Sanji really need a cyborg royal lineage? Was it necessary for Luffy to grow up with the king of the pirate's son? In my opinion, this isn't depth. I think it's an overconnection, and seriously, despite how big the One Piece world is, I think these overt connections make the world feel smaller. And to the One Piece fans defending this, ask yourself this. Was it really necessary that we had to find out the queen of the beast pirates was Frankie's father? But Shane, they're both cyborgs!
I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit that I have ever heard.
I could have gone the rest of my life without knowing this. Everybody has to be connected in some weird, intricate way. It amazes me that Oda will tell us some useless piece of trash knowledge like this, but we get no information still after 25 plus years later about the Will of D, and we only get a tidbit of information about the Void Century, essentially confirming what we already knew, that it was a global war, and that the world government had erased history on purpose. Now,
I do agree about that point. There there is a lot of times where I feel like Oda gives us some like useless ass information, and then we're just like waiting on the important stuff, and it just doesn't come.
Here, I'm not trying to be pretentious, I'm just imploring you to acknowledge that as the story has gone on, more characters are revealed to be either royalty, the children of legends, connected to the world-shaping families, directly tied to the world government or the 5 elders in some way, and overall, as large as the One Piece world is, it becomes claustrophobic when every single character is connected to one another in some weird way like this. Everyone has to be super.
And with everyone super, no one will be.
Alright guys, try to keep up with me for the next one here. Through time travel shenanigans, we get to meet Kozuke Momonosuke, who I will refer to as Momo, who turns out to be royalty, because of course he is. And once again, the Straw Hats have to overthrow the evil villain Kaido and restore his kingdom. And of course
Alright, I'm going to pause it. I think he said enough about this, so I'm going to speak on it. Yes, there's a shit ton of princes and princesses and royalty and nobility. You know why? That's the whole story. Right? Like, we learn that the whole point of the story, right, with Emu sitting on the fucking throne, and the whole story is about these 20 kingdoms, is like literally the basis of all of One Piece, and that's the big mystery. So the whole point of One Piece, essentially, is based off of these 20 kingdoms, right? And who's going to sit on the throne to rule the world. So yeah, like there's going to be a shit ton of princes and princesses and royalty because that's the entire system. Like that's literally the entire thing. Right? So yeah, it's like watching Dragon Ball Z and be like, yo, why is every arc, every villain's like after the Dragon Balls? It's like, well, yeah. Dragon Ball Z, you know what I mean? Like that's the title, you know? Since episode 1, it's been, hey, I got this Dragon Ball. It's like, yes, One Piece is literally all about royalty. Like that's the theme of the whole fucking story. Is the 20 kingdoms Emu, like all that, like the Void Century. It's literally all about power in the system. Like that's the whole. I don't know how else I could explain that, but yeah, like it actually. I'm actually kind of disappointed that they didn't meet more princesses because what they named, he only named like what, 4, right? There's supposed to be 20, right? So percentage wise, Oda's actually under delivering in that department.
Hats bring forth restoration by once again Luffy punching out the problem and we move on. And it was at this point in the story after Wano that I completely checked out because the solution is almost always the same. Notice how I'm saying almost always the same. Oda dresses up this fine veneer of a different island, different costumes, and introducing a different villain each arc, but all of it, every single bit of it, serves the exact same narrative function. The only thing that ever changes in this story is the power label the story slaps on the antagonist. At first it's, oh, we're just dealing with a marine captain or an average pirate. What are we gonna do? Oh, just get Luffy to punch it. Okay. And then it's, oh, this one's a warlord of the sea. All right, gotta be careful here. Just get Luffy to punch it in the face. Okay, and now we're at the point in the series where it's, oh shit, this is getting serious. We're dealing with the emperors now. This villain is stronger than all the previous villains combined, and the solution is still the same. Luffy punches it in the face. Now I have a question for all the One Piece fans who are obviously seething in my comment section right now. Do you guys not realize that this is just a different island, different costumes, different villain, but it's the same narrative function, beat for beat, time after time? At this point, this
Like 90% of shonen series.
Luffy could go Gear 5th, scream Gum Gum Galaxy Cluster, Elephant Nut Buster, Red Rifle Supernova Sloppy Toppy Attack! He could knock out all of the warlords, all of the emperors, every single admiral. He could collapse Marijois. He could beat the Gorosei's ass. Luffy could slap Ian off of his throne and then stretch his fist down into Gold D. Rogers' grave and grab his corpse and fucking strangle him. And you know what, guys? I would feel nothing because I already know how every fight in this story resolves. I don't.
But do you though? Because like, he couldn't fight Smoker. He couldn't do shit to Magellan. He lost to who's the pacifista? What's his name? Kuma on Sabaody Island. They all got deleted from that island. Okay, he lost at Marineford. Like, like I feel like when you actually go through it, that Luffy actually loses a shit ton of fights, and also some fights like Magellan and who's that other guy, Smoker. Luffy couldn't even touch them, right? I mean, maybe now, maybe he has like hockey and stuff. He probably could do something. I don't know. I'd have to go back and read. Maybe he did do some at one point, but like, I just feel like, yeah, there are some villains here and there where it's like he even showed Kaido, right? Like, it's not like Luffy just showed up and just like struggled real hard and just had to like push past his limits and punch Kaido really hard in the face. It's like, nah, he basically died and was resurrected into God. Like, so it's so I don't feel like it's definitely not nearly as simplistic as this dude is making it out to be, which is why I feel like most people haven't really dropped One Piece, because yes, there are a lot of times when Luffy just goes, you know what, if one punch won't work, I'll punch him 2,000 times, you know, like Gum Gum Gatling or whatever, Gomu Gomu Gatling, whatever they say in the Japanese version, whatever. But I don't know, I feel like I made my point.
The escalation anymore. People act like raising the power ceiling automatically raises the narrative stakes. And this would almost be true if that actually existed in this universe, and I'll talk about that in full later. But I'm sorry guys, there's no amount of beautiful Toei animation and flashing colors that's going to be a substitute for good writing. Luffy could scream his head off and throw the best punches in the universe, but if the arc isn't well written, then I'm not going to be invested in the narrative.
Alright, so I gotta jump in here to promote some stuff before continuing the video. You better not skip, okay? You fuck, don't skip. You know why? Because I know that whenever we promote stuff, that's your favorite part to skip. So don't skip this part, or else, you know what? I'm gonna show my balls. I'm going to show my ball sack during this part of the video, and if you skip the promotional stuff, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss my balls. What am I promoting today? So if you don't know, I am the creator of a manga series called Byoto. If you don't know what manga is, it's basically just Japanese comic books. So if you want to support your boy, there's a link in the description where you can go read my manga series Byoto for free. Now, there is a second link down there as well that will take you to my Patreon, where you can read a handful of chapters ahead of time. Here's my balls. Look, it's a little sack with balls. See? Told you I would do it. Anyways, there's a second link below that goes to my Patreon. So if you want to support your boy financially, you can subscribe to the Patreon, and then you can be a handful of chapters ahead of everybody else. So that way, if anyone ever says, hey, do you know what's going to happen next? You could be like, you damn right I do. But yeah, go check out my manga, link in the description, and support your boy. Now back to the video.
And when we talk about narrative, oh my god, One Piece has a pacing problem, and there is so much narrative padding that coats this series. One Piece.
Oh yeah, this is undefendable. I'm sorry, but the pacing, yes.
slow pacing. It has hostile pacing. It took Moist Critical 5 years to finish the series, and he was watching it with one pace, which skips all of the filler. Your boy did not have that same luxury. I was never the same after the Davy back fight round 2. But in all seriousness, One Piece constantly stalls itself through contrivances that exist for one reason only: to delay progress. Uh-oh, Luffy is stuck in the pool at Arlong Park. Luffy gets swallowed by a snake in Skypiea and thinks he's inside a cave, because again, this main character has a room temperature IQ. Oopsie, Zoro fell into the chimney. What's that you say? We have to wait 20 chapters before Luffy can arrive on the rooftop in Wano? Now we all...
I will say 100% agree. This is one of those things where people always, I hear so many people like, how is it that One Piece is over 1,000 chapters long and it's still getting better and better every arc? And it's like, yeah, because Oda took all of his best writing and put it at the very end of the series. So almost, I don't want to say every arc, but most arcs that we go through, we're just kind of waiting to see like what happens next, not really what's happening right now, because there is a shit ton of filler in One Piece. And I'm not talking about anime, can't, filler, like anime original filler. I'm talking about in the actual manga, like definitely so many chapters I read, it'll be like a 16-page chapter, and like the first 10 pages, dead ass don't matter. Like, and I know people will be like, well, he's expanding the world. A lot of times, no. He's not doing shit with anybody. He's not expanding the world at all. He's not introducing any more characters. He's not giving more backstory on any characters. He's not giving any more lore. He's dead ass wasting time for like 10 pages straight. And then the last 6 pages, something will actually, move, something will move. Whether it's with a character, whether it's with somebody saying a sentence that's special later on, or something will actually move. So I do 100% agree on this point where like you said, like Zoro will get fucking stuck in a chimney, right? Which for a joke, sure, do it. But if I have to wait for him like 10 chapters for him to finally get out, it's like, dude, what are we doing? Like, what?
These are contrivances that Oda deliberately puts in here to try to stagnate the plot further. And of course, you don't want the clash with the main villain to happen immediately. But after a certain point, some of this stuff just becomes ridiculous. The stalling and the narrative padding really draw out these arcs. And at this point in One Piece, if you don't like one of the modern arcs, oh man, I'm sorry, but you gotta strap in, because there is no escape. No short detour here, no palate cleanser, nothing. And this is exactly what happened to me. Wano was a particularly hard arc for me to get through. The pacing of Wano destroyed me, and I just found myself asking, Oda, how many days are we gonna be in Wano for? On the next day!
I will say this. Wano is the one arc that I actually do think that it deserved to be as long as it was. I don't know how the anime handled it. I'm only a manga reader. I don't watch the anime. I plan to watch the anime as like a follow-up to the series or whatever once it's over in 10 years. But to me, I going through the manga, because once an arc finishes, I go back through and I binge that arc as, so I can binge instead of the weekly experience. Because I do the weekly experience first, and then once the arc is finished, I go back and binge it to remember everything that happened. And I will definitely say, yes, Wano was super fucking long, but it was worth it in the manga. I don't know how trash the pacing was in the anime, but again, speaking for the manga, you actually did need every chapter of that arc, and it was very well done. It was just packed full of content. And I actually really enjoyed the content. So I actually, like, Wano's one of the few arcs that I actually have, like, 0 issues with.
Day, and the next 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 day, and the
I just realized we're only 16 minutes into this video. I'm going to stop pausing as much.
day, next day, and the next day, and the next day. Now, I struggled getting through Wano, not because of the island itself, I actually thought that was pretty interesting, but I just really couldn't get behind Kaido. And unfortunately for me, I was stuck with this guy for fucking hundreds of chapters. Now, I don't like to use crude labels like this, so I'm not going to say that Kaido is a stupid villain, but I would say that he's a little bit underdeveloped. Maybe
Going back to my, I like how I said I wouldn't pause as much, and then 20 seconds later I pause. But I wouldn't necessarily, I do agree with that. Kaido definitely wasn't as cool as a villain as I thought he was going to be. But going back to what I said previously, I don't necessarily think that the climax of most One Piece arcs is the main portion that I would say is like the best part. It's usually the content within those arcs, which is a point I made earlier in the video.
half-cooked. He doesn't really have a personality. I mean, we get a backstory with Rock's Big Mom, how he got his devil fruit, the rivalry with Odin, I think that was okay. And then we just spend hundreds of chapters on this. But a backstory does not equate to a personality. You can give this character all the lore in the world, and it doesn't mean that he's well written. When we boil Kaido down to his essence, what do we really take away from him? Well, we know he's strong, we know he's an alcoholic, and we know he wants to unalive himself. I mean, are we really describing one of the emperors of the sea or my stepfather? And all of these traits lead to one of the dumbest introductions for a character I have ever seen. Kaido is introduced to us as he attempts to unalive himself by jumping off of the Sky Island. Kaido in this chapter makes a big impact, both literally and metaphorically. And I'll be entirely honest with you guys, when I first saw this in the anime, I thought this was one of the most badass character introductions of all time. Sad to say this, but I specifically remember a younger version of myself tweaking out on the couch being like, oh, I can't wait for the Straw Hats to take on Kaido. Oh my god. But then you think about this scene for any longer than 2 seconds and you realize how stupid it is. You realize, oh, Kaido is a devil fruit user. So let me ask you One Piece fans a very simple question. If Kaido really wanted to die, then why didn't Kaido just go play in the ocean, huh? Oh, and I can already hear you guys typing in the comment section. But Shane, Kaido wanted an honorable death on the battlefield. Okay, let's take that premise, alright? Let's say Kaido wanted to die on the battlefield. Then why did he dodge Zoro's attack? Why did he build the Beast Empire? Why would he avoid things that would kill him if this stupid fuck really wanted to die? If you want to die, you don't spend hundreds of chapters actively preventing it. So it's either Kaido doesn't actually want to die, or the concept was never truly thought through by Oda. And this is the concept for a character who becomes the backbone of a multi-year-long arc. And this was one of my main problems with Wano. You're trapped in a seemingly endless arc with a character who you couldn't care less about. And while the plot is stalling, we're also being fed the same cycle of gags endlessly for decades. How many times am I gonna have to listen to Brook wanting to see some panties? Like, at this point, just show the man some fucking underwear. This stuff happens over and over again. We get Sanji, his
Oh, yeah, I will say that though. Yeah, I really do hate that a lot of the characters in One Piece do end up not really having a personality. They're just kind of that stereotypical, like, what would you say, like, trait of a character. Like, they basically, their personality is their character trait, and that's all they are. It's like hard for them to kind of escape that. So I do agree on that.
bleeding at the sight of a woman. So many times that Oda actually escalates this into a plot point. Sanji gets a nosebleed underwater and practically bleeds out from glancing at a mermaid. Think about how insane this is. Here we are in an arc with racial tension, historical oppression, political extremism, the legacy of Fisher Tiger, and the driving plot point is, oh, Sanji is bleeding too much because he's horny. This, in my opinion, isn't comedy. I think it's just tonal sabotage. And yes, I know that One Piece is supposed to be a goofy series. I've never had a problem with the majority of the character gags. In fact, I think some of them can be quite funny, like Zoro getting lost, for instance. I'm not saying that the series can't be goofy, but eventually my patience with One Piece really starts to run out. Because we've gotten these gags hundreds of times, and honestly, at some point I just consider this to be wasted narrative space. We could be using this same time to resolve some of the mysteries that Oda himself has introduced hundreds of chapters ago. Oda has introduced so many mysteries into the One Piece worlds, and all of the One Piece fans, they just eat this shit up. The resolution, it doesn't even matter. The Void Century, the Will of D, Joy Boy, the Ancient Kingdom, the Ancient Weapons, the true nature of Devil Fruits, the world...
I know, like, that's what I'm saying too, is like, these arcs are packed full of content, and like, yeah, a lot of it is world building stuff that is really cool, but on the other side, there's so much that does nothing for us, and when it comes to like all the main points of One Piece, they just get talked about. So then we think in our head, we're like, oh my God, they're talking about the Will of D. What's going to happen? They're talking about the Will of D. But then you like finish the arc and like nothing about the Will of D came to light at all. Like we learned dead ass nothing.
its origin. How did Blackbeard get his powers? Where is Laugh-Tale located? What does Eam really look like? And of course, what is the One Piece? And instead of answering any of these inquiries, Oda chooses to do this instead.
Good question. For another time.
Instead, we get hints, teases, half sentences, and silhouettes, just more vague statements that promise answers later on. And of course, I'm not expecting all of these to be answered right away. But I mean, come on, at this point, you think we would have some answers to this universe. Do you guys...
Exactly. Like, that's why One Piece seems like it's better than it's ever been right now. But that's because everything we've ever wanted to see, we're finally starting to see it little by little.
Long it took for Oda to actually show us Dr. Vegapunk's face after all of the years of these bullshit silhouettes and purposely obscuring his head. Hundreds of chapters, years of waiting. You guys ready for this? Was this design really worth over a decade of silhouette hype?
Yes, 100%. I don't care what anybody says. When you really put things together, the fact that he is Einstein, and with the apple, because like the apple fell and hit Newton's head, and his head is an apple on his, like everything about his design is so perfect, because we know that a lot of characters are based off of famous people in the real world, and for all of these like super smart people's parts of them coming together, forming the smartest person in the world's character design, it actually makes so much sense. So to be honest, me personally, I love Vegapunk's design, and it's probably one of the best characters, well thought out character designs in the series, at least top 10.
real payoff from seeing this. Oda seems far more interested in setting up intrigue for his series than actually paying it off. And for every mystery that gets partially answered, we get 3 new ones dropped on us. We get so much world building in the series, so much lore density, and Oda excels at this. He does a great job. I don't think Oda is a bad author. All I'm asking for is a little bit of narrative closure here, because when everything's a mystery, nothing feels meaningful. And this brings me to my next critique. Oda tries to create a fake sense of meaning through urgency. The race against finality, or the ticking clock, is one of Oda's favorite tools. One Piece does this thing that I like to call Dragon Ball time. Remember when Frieza tells Goku, "The planet will explode in 5 minutes," and then these 5 minutes proceed to turn into 20 episodes? Well, Oda does have his own version of this, and it's because so many of the arcs ended the same.
Again, that's kind of an anime thing. If you read the manga, I mean, it might be a little longer than 5 minutes, but the Frieza fight really wasn't as long as it seems. It's just that the anime pacing is so bad, so I don't really throw that shade towards the authors at all for both One Piece and Dragon Ball.
With either the Straw Hats escaping or winning, that Oda has to inject this artificial countdown so it feels as though we have some sort of urgency or stakes. Now, I'm going to be listing multiple examples of Oda using this narrative crutch, but I'm sure, just because of the sheer length and girth of One Piece, that I'm missing something here. But this aside, let's start off with Little Garden, where we have the Wax Candle of Doom. Here we have a countdown where the Straw Hats have to escape the wax before they essentially turn into statues. Then we move into Alabasta, where we have a literal countdown with a bomb about to detonate. In Skypiea, we also have a race against the clock, where Luffy has to stop Enel before he completely erases the island. In Water 7, we have the Aqua Laguna, which is just looming like a natural disaster deadline. Then Enies Lobby with the Buster Call countdown before the island is completely destroyed. Thriller Bark, we have the Sunrise countdown, where Luffy needs to beat the piss out of Moria and return all the shadows before the sun rises. Marineford is pretty obvious, you have to save Ace before the execution schedule. Fisherman Island, the Noah falling, crashing into the island, we gotta stop that. Punk Hazard, we have the race against the poison gas, you gotta get to safety. Dressrosa, the birdcage, enclosing all the people and killing them. Wano, Onigashima is about to crash into the capital, gotta stop it. And my personal favorite, Big Mom wanting birthday cake, gotta get this bitch dessert before she destroys the entire island in a rampage. But my entire point, and the crux of what I'm saying here, is that urgency without risk is nothing but theater. And this is why the race against the clock doesn't work for me anymore in One Piece. This countdown exists to simulate stakes that don't even exist. Oda uses these various countdowns to give you an artificial feeling that the tensions and stakes are being raised. But more importantly, Oda uses these countdowns to truly avoid consequence, because real stakes would require real loss, and that's something that One Piece refuses to do. And this brings us to what is, in my opinion, the single most egregious, disgustingly narrative, cowardly thing that Oda does in all of One Piece.
I not disagreeing with this one.
Deaths. This is not a nitpick. This is not a handful of mistakes. This is a pattern that is so severe throughout One Piece, it has deprived the series of all narrative tension. There are so many fucking meaningless characters in this series, and yet Oda refuses to kill any of them out of narrative cowardice. Oda wants you to feel as though these characters are dying, without ever committing to them actually being dead. Death stops meaning anything in this universe. There's a line of dialogue in the anime adaptation of One Piece in the Wano arc between Sanji and Chopper. I found this line to be beautifully ironic, and honestly it acts as an allegory and like a thesis statement for the entire series of One Piece, even though this is 100% unintentional on Oda's part. Sanji saves Chopper from Queen and the Beast Pirates, okay? And he says to him, "Don't cry, you fool. How many times have we seen miracles?" And on the surface, this is meant to be comforting, a statement of hope. Maybe it's inspirational. But miracles stop being miracles when they happen constantly. They stop being extraordinary. They stop meaning anything. A miracle, by definition, is supposed to be a rupture in reality, something that should not happen but does so anyway. Yet in One Piece, miracles aren't rare interruptions. This is just the default setting of the universe. Characters survive explosions that level cities. They endure fatal wounds with no lasting consequences. They fucking die, only to walk it back an arc later with a bandage and a joke. And when everything is survivable...
Dude, literally, bro. And one of the saddest excuses I hear from One Piece fans is they're like, well, Ace dies, so that's just Oda's way of saying that when a character does die, it's gonna be big. And it's like, no. No. You have one example, bro. One example. I mean, you could throw Whitebeard in there too, but like, they died at the same time. So
sacrifice is reversible, nothing is truly at stake in this universe. And that's why reading this story for me, One Piece has quietly undermined itself the entire time. Oda wants us to cry. He wants us to believe that a moment is tragic, final and devastating, but then it's that same pattern. Over and over, no matter how bad things look, everything will be fine. Everyone will survive, and the world will reset. And that's why Sanji's line becomes the perfect metaphor for all of this. Don't cry. You've seen this before. And that's exactly right. We have seen this before so many times that death has lost its meaning. Now, I could end this segment right here. The point is already clearly made, but instead, I'm going to do something far less abstract. I'm going to go through every fake-out death that I could find in One Piece, one by one, and let's see if anyone can still seriously argue that this doesn't hollow out the stakes. So to start off, we have to trace our steps back to the East Blue, where we have the Mary. No, not the ship, even though One Piece fans probably count that as a death. I'm talking about Kaya's butler, Mary. Kuro literally slashes this man open. We see the blood all over the place. We get an emotional beat, the dramatic...
Bro, I remember watching that as a kid. Dude, I deadass thought the butler died. The sheep butler, not Kuro the butler, but, you know what I mean? Like, I thought that he had killed him. And then, bro, like, literally 5 minutes later, homie's like, yo, he crushed the glasses or whatever that you gave him as a present. It's like, bro, how are you alive?
But of course he's alive. Moving on, we have Gin from Don Krieg's crew, severely poisoned. This is treated like a death sentence that we'll never see this character again. No, he's fine. Already, we are this early into the story, and it's telling you, don't trust what you're seeing. And then we move into the Brokeworks arc, where the explosions are basically confetti at this point. We have Mr. 9, who is blown up at point-blank range by Mr. 5. I mean, look at this man's face. He is literally eating this shit. And this scene is treated like an emotional death, with Vivi screaming as this man is essentially blown into orbit. But nope, he's alive. And speaking of other characters that survived, we have Miss Monday, who was also blown up at point-blank range. Don't worry, guys, she's completely fine. She only took a grenade to the face, and we just see her fiery corpse, right? with Vivi screaming. But she's good. Don't worry, she's still alive. And then we have Igram, who's blown up by Robin. Like, they dropped both the little boy and the fat man on this guy, and he comes back. I shit you not. This man strolls back into the story. He saunters on in with one single band-aid on his face. One band-aid, zero explanations. You wanna know how he survived? Fuck you, that's how. We don't get an explanation. This is genuinely Looney Tunes type shit here. And then of course we have Pell, probably the most infamous fake-out death in the entire
I mean, he does say Looney Tunes type stuff, but also it like Luffy's whole power is it goes Looney Tunes. So I just feel like that's just where Oda is, like that's like what the series is supposed to be. It's like Tom and Jerry type stuff, you know what I mean? Like they're never really gonna kill off Tom, but like he'll get trapped in like a giant mouse trap or cat trap, I guess you would call it.
So Oda writes this emotional scene, essentially giving Pell an entire chapter of his own leading up to the sacrifice. And then we get the sacrifice itself. Pell carrying a bomb meant to destroy the entire country of Alabasta. It's heroic, emotional. We see the bomb go off, and this thing looks like a nuclear explosion. This bomb looks like something ripped straight out of the subspace emissary from Brawl. And Pell, after getting this emotional chapter leading up to his supposed death, he survives. Just somehow, don't even think about it, just turn off your brain and accept Oda's work, okay? And it was from this point on in One Piece where death became completely optional. And then moving on, we get Mr. 2, who fittingly has two fake-out deaths, one at the end of Alabasta and the second at Impel Down. But his second fake-out death is especially egregious. He's literally asked by Magellan, any last words? I don't know how anybody can defend this. I mean, the phrase any last words is universal language of storytelling, meaning this character is dead, except no, of course he survives, and then he fucking survives again, and then he survives again, and then at this point in the story, I don't even believe what I'm being shown. And then we move to Skypiea, where we meet Pagaya, Konis' father, who, in my opinion, gets one of the most absurd fake-out deaths in the entire series. This guy gets an entire death scene written out for him, where he heroically pushes his daughter out of the way, taking a fatal strike from Enel's lightning. It was an emotional and well-written scene, hit me right in the heart. And at the end of the arc, Konis tells the Straw Hats about Pagaya's passing. Chopper saying, don't tell me. Nami looking devastated. Konis on the brink of tears. Sanji looking distraught. Luffy's upset. But just then, Pagaya returns from the great beyond for Oda to break the fourth wall, and for Pagaya to apologize for still being alive.
Well, I think the biggest thing is like Oda. It's so hard because it's like, yes, this is a huge thing that does hold One Piece back from being incredible. But I think Oda really, really does write for kids. I think when he came into Shonen Jump, he always viewed Shonen Jump as for a younger demographic. And I remember in like the early One Piece volumes, there is an author note where he does talk about how him and his friends went to a ramen shop one time, and on TV the One Piece anime was airing, and he saw a bunch of kids watching the One Piece anime, and that like inspired him, and is like that's why I do it, you know. So I think that from his viewpoint, he's trying to write a story that is it is more childish, you know what I mean? And for us older audience, it does kind of suck. Like you don't really get that emotional character death. But I think there is a lot of reason to it, not necessarily like Oda's a bad writer in that regard.
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it! I mean, this is Oda admitting he knows how ridiculous this is. And the sad thing is, this isn't even the only fake-out death in Skypiea. We get to see Bellamy about to be executed with his neck literally on the chopping block, but of course he shows up later, he's completely fine, so don't worry about it. And then we move on to Jaguar D. Saul. This is gonna be controversial for you guys, because I know there are gonna be some One Piece clowns that defend this. This is emotional manipulation without payoff. This is one of the most emotionally dishonest fake-out deaths in the entire series. Oda milks the hell out of the scene. Pages and pages. Robin crying. Saul telling her, you have to live, Robin. I mean, and this is framed as a complete character death and foundational trauma for Robin. Except, fast forward, hundreds of chapters later, Saul is alive. And I know some of you One Piece fans are going to try some retroactive justification talking about how Robin lost Professor Clover and your mother, so therefore it's completely fine because she still has a traumatic backstory, and that Oda actually wrote himself a way out with this because of the Ice Time Capsule attack, even though in reality Aokiji froze Saul with the attack Ice Time. But no, you don't get to do this. I mean, if you want death to matter in your universe, you don't take it back after you milk this shit for tears. Once again, this comes off as Oda trying to emotionally manipulate the audience without any real stakes being involved. And then we move on to Spondum. His spine is snapped, completely broken asunder, and simply put, this man should be dead, but he's not. Why? Oh, because nobody dies in One Piece, that's why. Then we move on to Thriller Bark, where we get Dr. Hogback, who is crushed by ores, a giant weighing hundreds of tons. He lives. Why? I don't know, because Oda refuses to commit to anything. And this is why I say death does not exist in this universe. We have characters with essentially zero narrative importance, and Oda makes these guys immortal. This character, Lakuba, that's right, he has a name. The pirate at the auction house who bites off his own tongue. It's horrific. It's shocking. And yet he's still alive. Like, Oda won't even kill the characters that don't matter. Oh, this shit is terrible. And then we move to Fishman Island, okay? We get Vanderdecken, impaled.
Bro, is this dude deadass going through every single character death fake out in the entire manga, bro? That's actually kind of absurd. How much time did this dude put into this?
trident. He's alive. Then we get Mocha, okay? She is a child who is subjected to human experimentation, eats a fuck ton of poisonous candy. It's treated like a tragedy, and then of course, she's fine. She's fine. Brownbeard, this special snowflake, gets 2 fake out deaths. Also a side note, you know the fake out deaths are getting bad when even minor characters, fucking nothing burger characters like this, have multiple fake out deaths, only to later show up completely fine. Then we get to Whole Cake Island where we meet Charlotte Moscato, one of Big Mom's numerous kids that she's pumped out over the years. This man should be dead, flat out. Big Mom rips this man's soul out of his body, and we are told in the manga that he's dead. And this is framed as cruel, final, and irreversible. But then he's just fine, and of course we get no explanation. I mean, there's no lasting consequence, no visible damage, no narrative cost. I mean, this fuck just shows up and he's watching Vegapunk's broadcast casually.
Bro, I don't even remember that one.
This wasn't enough. There's also Charlotte Opera, and the less said about his character design, the better. But this character also has his soul drained by Big Mom, and we can't confirm 100% that he is alive, and we can't classify this 100% as a fake out death. But I would bet you everything that I have in my bank account, which, to be fair, isn't that much, but I would still bet it that this man is alive. And then we get to the champion of fake out deaths, Peckhams. This man deserves his own category as the king of fake outs. He doesn't die just once, nor twice, but thrice. Shot repeatedly by Beiji, completely fine. The second time,
God damn, dude, at this point, is Ace alive?
shot again by Beiji, this time at point blank range, off of a cliff, into the ocean as a devil fruit user. Still alive. The third and final time we see this guy, he's turned into a literal pincushion. And let's be honest, he's still alive. Until I see a corpse, a grave, and a funeral, I'm assuming he's alive. Now, I want to talk about Pound, because this fake out death isn't annoying, it's just genuinely insulting at this point. Pound's entire character revolves around one thing, him never getting to love his own daughters. Never got to hold them, never raised them, never got to be a part of their lives. And so, of course, Oda tries to milk Pound like a cow, and in his final moments, he has Pound congratulate Chiffon on her wedding. And Pound
A lot of these I kind of didn't really care for that much. There is one character fake out death that I was actually really mad at. It was, he might bring it up. What's that dude's name? Oh my god, I know his name. I can't think of it. The samurai. He'll probably get to it, and then I'll talk about it.
His love will never be returned by his own daughter because she never truly knew him. And this is framed as a tragedy. It's framed as final. We have Oven in the background like the Grim Reaper raising his blade to Pound's head. But then Pound is alive. Like, this shit is ridiculous. It is emotional fraud. You don't get to build this entire tragedy around irreversible loss, milk these fucking tears, and then undo it without any consequence or care. And my question to the One Piece fans, when Oda pulls shit like this, why should I trust any emotional moment in this story? These fake out deaths are so corrosive that they don't just cheapen death, they cheapen the overall emotion that I feel when I'm supposed to be reading or watching this story. I hate this fake out death so much because it's not just simply a fake out death, it's a fake tragedy. Pound reunites with Lola and Chiffon. Yay, all's well that ends well. Happy, 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 fuck you. And then we move on to Wano, and at this point, this stops being a character problem, and it just becomes a world problem. Like, nobody dies in this universe. Because in One Piece, not even the animals are allowed to die. In Wano, we see Kozuki Oden slice this massive boar cleanly in half. It's a moment of shock and a display of Oden's strength. And of course, you guys know where I'm going with this. The pig is completely fine. He comes back. He's rocking a couple stitches on him, looking like a football. You know what, Oda? I'll give you a get-out-of-jail-free card with this one, because it's funny, but I mean, this is still ridiculous all the same. But this aside, Wano abuses even more fake-out deaths. Warden Babanuki literally explodes himself from the inside out. He uses the self-destruct attack, and he's completely fine afterwards. Kinemon gets multiple fake-out deaths. He's impaled. He's beaten by Kaido. Oda fake kills this man again and again and again, and he's always fine. At a certain
This homie, what was his name? Kimino, whatever. Bro, I will never forget when Kaido and Big Mom are standing above Luffy, right? I don't know how they do this in the anime, but in the manga it was sick as hell. If I remember correctly, so like Luffy walks right past these motherfuckers, right? 2 Yonko standing in front of him. Luffy just walks right past them, and he like is holding Kinemon in his arms, right? And Kinemon says something like, "Will you please, put the weight of the Wano country on your back, dear Luffy," or something like that, like some emotional shit, right? And then, of course, Kinemon's like, like he's quote unquote dead, right? And then Luffy stands up. He's like, I'm gonna say this one more time. I am the man who's gonna be king of the pirates, or something like that. He says a cool line, right? And then of course they fight, whatever. I always remember that moment in the manga being like, holy shit, dude, they I mean, at this point I should know that he didn't actually die, but in that moment I was like, yo, this is a legendary scene. Like, this is a scene I'm never gonna forget. And then of course, like 2 chapters later, Kinemon's in the background rooting for Luffy, like, beat him or whatever. I'm like, bro, how are you alive, bro?
You just stop reacting. You just watch the shit and you're like, I don't even care. Orochi also got multiple fake-out deaths, with him being decapitated and burned. Both times, he's just fine. And in addition to Orochi, Kandra also got a fake-out death, just because why not? Now let's talk about Dr. Vegapunk. And yes, I know you guys are gonna be screaming in the comment section. Vegapunk was technically killed, okay? Because Zaro put this man down, his body dies. Yeah, but here's the problem, guys. Vegapunk still isn't gone, because all the satellites still survive. His consciousness is backed up into Punk records. His knowledge, the thing that defines him, still exists. His mind lives on, even though his body was destroyed. And let's be honest, guys, Oda is 100% going to be putting Vegapunk's consciousness back into a body later on. So I'm going to ask you guys what actually died here then, because it sure as fuck isn't the character, it's not his influence on the One Piece series, so we are left with...
I mean, I'll give that one a pass because here's the thing with me and character deaths. I don't really care that the author doesn't kill off characters as long as it makes sense, right? Like, so for me, Vegapunk being smart enough to back up his memories into multiple different servers and stuff and put them in different robots. Like, to me, that actually makes sense. So I'm actually not mad at this one at all.
Zero consequences once again. But don't worry guys, Dr. Vegapunk will be revived soon, but until then you can enjoy Dr. Vegapants, a literal carbon copy of Dr. Vegapunk, except he wears panties on his head. Hilarious. Earlier One Piece faked deaths by saying, well actually they survived. And now in the modern day of One Piece, we are still faking deaths by saying, but they died, but actually their mind lives on. It's a different method, but the same narrative cowardice. Oda always wants the emotional weight of death, while always giving himself an out. But after this many fake out deaths, my problem isn't who survived the story. It's that One Piece has taught me to not believe it when someone dies. One Piece has lost my trust. Every emotional moment in this story becomes nothing more than a sad performance rather than anything of lasting consequence. So at this point you may be wondering, okay Shane, well who actually does die in One Piece? Well, I'm gonna break it to you. The majority of deaths in this series occur in flashbacks. Flashbacks are where Oda is the most comfortable killing off his characters. Now almost every character of importance in this series is
All right, I'm going to pause it there because we're going to go into the flashback talk, which it's titled Too Many Flashbacks, which in my opinion, you can't have too many flashbacks. But to me, unless it's like a repetitive flashback, because I know the Naruto anime does that, not the manga. Okay, Naruto has a perfect amount of flashbacks in the manga. In the anime, they show Sasuke's backstory like 19 times. Brother, we see it like twice in the manga, but whatever. The point being is going back to the character deaths. I will say this, right? Obviously, I would never put myself, for those of you who know, I write my own manga series. Link in the description if you want to check it out. I would never put myself above Oda as a writer. I'm not trying to do that. But I will say, if you do want a manga that does kill off characters and doesn't really rely on fake out deaths at all, really, check out my manga, because personally, I actually enjoy killing off characters. That kind of sounds morbid, but I actually kind of like it. And I try not to do it too much because I'm not trying to be like Attack on Titan over here or whatever, but like, I don't know, man. I just know that like I'm going to have important characters in my story that'll die, and I'm not going to, I just don't do that. I don't do fake out deaths.
to have a tragic flashback, and almost every tragic flashback requires that someone has to die. You want to talk about being formulaic? This pattern is impossible to ignore, and it applies to every single person in the Straw Hats. Let's start off with Nami. Her mother figure Belmir is executed by Arlong. For Zoro, we get the death of Kuina, and this occurs very abruptly, but this flashback defines his entire motivation to become the world's strongest swordsman. Sanji, his
To be honest, I might skip this part. We're already an hour into this video I'm making is already an hour long, and we still got another like 15-20 minutes of his video. Dog, I'm just going to sum up this portion on my own, and that is like characters dying in flashbacks. I don't think it's formulaic at all. I mean, I don't want to say not formulaic. It is formulaic, but like I don't know, man. To me, I really like it. It's a formula I love. Like tournament arcs, right? Like if it's a good ass tournament arc, cool. If it's lame tournament arc, then yeah, it kind of feels too repetitive and I don't want to watch it. But it's the same thing with backstories, bro. If you write me a good ass backstory, bro, you can have a character death in every backstory. It could be the same thing over and over. Oh, these two people meet. Oh, these two people get along well. Oh, one of them dies. That becomes the, power within the other character. And it's like, I like it. If it's good, if it's written well, which One Piece usually does. So I'm gonna see if I can skip this backstory. Yeah, these backstory stuff.
The story starts, or safely outside of the present timeline. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that all flashback deaths are bad. I think they can be powerful.
Okay, he's still talking about flashback deaths. But again, I don't have anything like against it. Like I get what he's trying to say. Like it's formulaic.
Emotionally disposable. And this brings us to the present day deaths within the series. Starting off with Higema, a mountain bandit from the first couple chapters of One Piece. This character was completely insignificant. He was taken out by the Lord of the Coast within the first couple chapters of One Piece, and I think it's fair to say that nobody gives a fuck about him. And then we have Mr. 11, who we know literally nothing about except for the fact that 1, he's dead, and 2, he worked for Baroque Works at some point. So great start to the list here. Then we get Ashura Doji. Yeah, this character fucking sucks, man. Like, I was watching the Wano arc, and I genuinely had to ask myself, am I really watching One Piece, or is this my 600-pound life? This man is not raiding Onigashima. This man is raiding the fucking ice cream truck. Oda wants me to feel the emotional weight of Ashura Doji's death, but the only weight I'm feeling is strictly gravitational from his fat ass. Ashura Doji's introduced, and he's around, like, just long enough for you to remember his fucking...
Okay, bro. I don't think him being fat has anything to do with it. Plus, isn't this based off of, like, Japan or whatever? It's like they have, like, sumo wrestlers, right? Or is that China? Am I getting the cultures mixed up? Oh, shit, I'm canceled, bro.
He just shows up, he grunts, he drinks, he's sad about Odin, and then he dies. And in the story, it's like, oh, well, somebody died, so you have to be emotional. No, the emotion has to be earned, and Ashura Doji never earned the shit. I think the majority of the scabbards become interchangeable as the Wano arc starts to progress further, but I would bet you that he's no...
Bro, how... Like, I mean, I understand that they fake out a lot of character deaths in One Piece. But how are you going to get mad that Oda doesn't even kill off the non-important characters? And then when he does kill off non-important characters, you're like, bro, this character didn't even deserve to have a death. It's like, motherfucker, what do you want?
Favorite scabbard. Ashura's my favorite scabbard, Shane. Shut up, no he's not. Ashura Doji dies from an explosion, which is definitely surprising because we've seen so many characters survive these before. Speaking of the scabbards, we have Izo, who dies from only a few finger pistol attacks from the CP0 agents. These deaths mean nothing. They add nothing to the overall plot. They don't change the story whatsoever. It's a shame these characters don't have the durability of, say, Igrim, Pell, or maybe even fucking Pagaya, because then they'd probably be alive. No, but seriously, to the One Piece fans here, like, try to explain this shit. Try to justify how Igrim, a fucking nobody, could survive an island-sized explosion. Meanwhile, Izo, one of the former commanders of the Whitebeard Pirates, gets taken out by a couple finger pistol attacks. Logically, this makes sense. Maybe if you're getting hit in the head with Usopp's 10-ton hammer. And this is where the writing becomes inconsistent, because you have a Yonko division commander like Izo dying to a few finger pistols, but then you'll have other characters like Eustace Kid just getting obliterated by Shanks, a nuclear warhead being dropped on him, and I don't even blink. One Piece has made death so arbitrary that I no longer trust it even when the story asks me to. But this aside, we have other characters that die, like Monet, the bird woman from Punk Hazard, and, you know, let's be honest, why would I care?
Bro, I'm sorry. I'm gonna continue to skip through this stuff because he's still talking about character deaths. We at this point we get it, bro. Like, to be honest, bro, I get it.
And Emperor of the Sea falls. I mean, this moment matters. You can feel it. The world of One Piece changes because of his death. And Oda deserves credit for this. And now to talk about the death that I'm sure you guys have been screaming about in the comment section the entire time. Ace's death. I think this also works. I'll say this, I did find it frustrating for Ace to turn around just because Akainu was trash-talking Whitebeard, especially when you consider that Luffy, Whitebeard, and so many of these crews from the New World are risking everything to save him. So in my opinion, Ace fucks up here, and this mistake actually has consequences because Ace dies. The story doesn't undo it, and it's not a fake-out death. Ace's death breaks Luffy. He's already separated from his crew, and I would honestly say the tone of the series starts to shift a little bit. And for once, it seems as though One Piece is going to allow this loss to be real. And then Oda panics, because Sabo was introduced a few chapters later, right after Ace's death. And I know there are going to be some Sabo defenders in the comment section. You guys can cry about the third Sake Cup and tell me that the S on Ace's arm always stood for Sabo. I mean, maybe that's true, but let's be honest, the S could have stood for anything. It could have been symbolic, it could have just been a design quirk, but if you guys really want to ride Oda's nutsack and tell me that Sabo was foreshadowed from chapter 1, you go ahead and do that. Back in Alabasta, there was no definitive proof that Sabo was ever a fully realized character. My problem with Sabo is introducing a magical third brother 10 chapters after the most devastating death in the series. This is not organic. In my opinion, Sabo's appearance in One Piece has always been reactive. He's always felt like a replacement for Ace, and let's be real, functionally he is. He has the same role, the cool older brother. He serves the same emotional function for Luffy. He eats the same devil fruit as Ace, the Marimar no Mi, because of course he has. You dye this man's blonde hair black, and he's Ace 2.0. And the amnesia, oh my god, this is complete bullshit. I'm gonna borrow a quote from my boy Corcus and just say, this is a load of crap straight out of the horse's ass. It's a narrative contrivance to explain why a character never existed, until the story needed him to, of course. Sabo forgot everything, up until the exact moment Ace dies, of course, and then...
Alright, bro. I ain't even gonna lie. I'm gonna agree with him on that. I think this video's pretty much over for the most part, so I'm just gonna go ahead and end the video because we're already an hour in. This has basically became a podcast at this point, but my final thoughts, again, I stand on a lot of stuff I mentioned earlier. The entire plot of One Piece is based off of the 20 kingdoms, so there being a lot of royalty and princesses, it actually makes sense to the lore, so I'm not mad at that at all. The repetitive nature of the arcs, like how they're structured, I think, again, completely makes sense in my personal opinion. So again, I don't have any issues with that. And the fake out character deaths, I think, honestly, is the only thing that I personally have an issue with. But I feel like I've gotten used to that type of storytelling that I kind of mentally put myself in a position where I kind of am prepared for that. So when I do see like a character quote unquote die, I'm not disappointed when they didn't die, because at this point I'm like, dog, like if they die, they die. If they don't, they don't. Like, One Piece has just kind of trained my brain in that way, and I can understand why some people would actually get mad at that, like this dude. But for the most part, I think that he has valid points, but them being enough to make me want to drop One Piece is just something that I'm not going to do, because I still do see One Piece as an incredible story. It's just that I think a lot of it is not necessarily being poorly written, but just written in a different way than what you personally desire, I think is the best way to put it. And again, like, you look at pretty much every story, like 99% of stories do follow a similar structure, right? So, but I don't know. Again, he has great points. I'm gonna go ahead and end the video, or else this is gonna be 2 hours, because I'm just gonna keep talking, because it's One Piece and I love One Piece.
Bye. Have a beautiful time.